Jasper said, wow. And he said, what you gonna do about this scam? And his father, Jasper, said, you don't mean the scammer, what do you mean, the real estate person? He said, no, the scammer. And we thought he didn't know what he was talking about. It didn't make much sense. Finally, he said, when you go to King Supers, you use the scanner. So he's thinking that if I'm going to sell the house, somebody's got to scan it. That's heavy thought. We've got a generation of kids who grew up on the internet, who play with tablets and know all of those kind of things. And this society's got to be ready to deal with them. And we're the ones who are still here. We got to make it right. Yes, we've lost some ground. We gained a lot. We've lost some ground. We got to make it up. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you the question that they asked you in the TV program. What suggestions do you have regarding how we might better educate and motivate our young people about the ongoing struggle? I'd like your answer, then I'm probably going to like your
I
answer.
don't even know. I had so many answers.
Okay.
But I will say this, John. First of all, thank you for this honor this afternoon. Number two, at this age, I did not think that I would still be talking about high school, but it is part of my DNA, I see, and I'm glad of it, to be honest with you. I have the opportunity to speak to young people, and due to what I did go through, and I want to agree with a lot of things that Dr. Peters has mentioned. We came up during that time, although I'm going to have to change a few things you said. I was fortunate enough to have people around me, along with my parents, starting with my parents, to let me know that I was just as good as the next person, and that I had every opportunity available to me through education, that education was the road to success. And with that, the things that I went through at Little Rock Central High School was something that I had to stay above what was going on around me. And because of the teachings that I had there, that my parents had given me, reinforced by the black teachers, reinforced by my black community, and my church. Those were the things that made me as I stand today. With that, I tried to take that and build upon it, and I did build upon it. Brown versus Board of Education was something that was very key to this 12-year-old person because of what I learned at home and what I was hearing every day. So when that opportunity came along in 1957 to integrate that school that was 1 mile away from me, instead of going to that all-black high school, which was 5 miles away, it was a no-brainer for me to sign that sheet of paper and go to that particular school. If you read my book, Right Along the Way, you'll find out I hadn't even told my parents. They didn't even receive. They didn't know that I was going there until August of 1957. But that's because of how they taught me. So once you get that opportunity to do something, whether the door is cracked or is flowing wide open, you're prepared to go through it. And that's what I tell young people today, that they need to be prepared to go through the door. Do not look for things to just drop from the sky. You have a responsibility. You are to be the CEO of your being. You can control what you can do. And I enjoy the dialogue that I do get with not just high school students, but with college students. They are out there to change this world. What they need to understand understand is how they got to where they are today. And that is what we, those of us who have participated in civil rights, in the civil rights arena, whether we were asked to do it or we just happened to be a part of it. And that was my situation. I didn't just say I'm going to be a civil rights activist. I was doing what was right. And I think if we all try to do what is right, we will go much further along the way. I'm not sure, John, if I have hit on some of what I said on C-SPAN. I was very impressed with the 400 students that I spoke to there. It was at the museum in Washington. They are interested in doing the best that they possibly can with the various nonprofit organizations that are supporting them. And one of the things that I did say to them, you know, Facebook and Twitter and all of this other high technology, social media thing that is going on today is okay. But I would prefer for them to put a name of somebody in that group and learn something about various people. I will give you an example. The button. I happen to know the writer of that book. I got information and I read the book. And the movie is a little different from the book. But let me tell you something. With the 20s and the 30-year-old group of young people, they were very interested in what they saw at the theater. And the two mentioned to me individually in different settings who said that they went to the internet and put in certain names so that they could learn about learn more about that particular person. That is educating our people. That is educating all people, not just African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics, everyone. That is we're out there now. The internet has a lot of information, and we need to encourage that. As a grandparent, as a parent, as an uncle, aunt, whatever, you have a responsibility to those kids to try to encourage them to learn in whatever environment that makes them feel comfortable, because they can learn. They will learn. But we have to kind of get away from what we normally do. I had one young lady who's going to run for an office here, and she called and asked for some support. And my advice to her, and I'm giving what I can, is that she sit down with people like Senator Cannon, Senator Groff, and those in the past have presented and represented us here in this community. And I said, now listen to what they have to say. But that is not to say that you have to do it that way. You got to move from the 20th century over into the 21st century. And to do that, you need a strong foundation. Get what they can give you, and then tweak it to what you are.
Reverend Peters was with Dr. King. Carlotta was with the Little Rock Nine. Our next speaker went to school with Lincoln. And he survived. He's still with us now. But many of us, when we talk about teaching, we talk about Black history, we talk about great education, a lot of folks start with Regis Groff. Even though there were other teachers before him, everybody talked about Mr. Groff as being one of my favorite teachers. And so
I was also thinking about being old, or at least older. I've had about 7 decades almost that I can remember what was happening during that time. And I can recall where we were in the 40s and on forward. And I can recall in particular going to school in northwestern Illinois, a little town called Monmouth, Illinois. And the only black kids in the school were me and my 2 sisters. And then my dad, for whatever reason, the town of 9,000, we had to try living on each side of the city. And so we moved to another elementary school, and it was me and my 3 sisters now, and about 3 other black kids. And so 2 things came out of that experience. I think one was good and one wasn't. The one that wasn't good was that I didn't learn anything about black people. Just nothing. I think I learned about the peanut, Carver, and I think Booker T. Washington. Maybe. But what I did learn, and my sisters learned, that being in this school, where I never had a black teacher. I never had a black teacher all the way through college. But what I learned was from 7th grade to high school, and on in high school, was that in every class I was at least smarter than half of them in the room. And I was always next to the last at the spelling bees. Were it not for Penelope Heston, I would have been last at it. So I didn't come out of that experience thinking that I was inferior intellectually. And I think that was an advantage. but now, and you try thinking of civil rights and racism in 2013, you're struck with several things. One, I'm struck with the response to racism and civil rights in our communities and in the broader country. And I look at some black people who appear on Fox and who consider themselves conservatives and Tea Partiers, and who are justifying and supporting, patting on the back the people who are pure racists. But then on the other hand, I see young black people that we have to rely on for the future. I see them getting caught up in a couple of things. I see them, one, falling victim to an inferiority complex. Because who do they get mad at? They get mad at the gang member down the street who looks exactly like them. But they're mad at him because he, for some perceived intrusion into my neighborhood or my block versus your neighborhood. And the system is letting that play itself out. Oh, they say that they care. Black children are massacring each other in my home state, on the south side of Chicago. 10 killed last night, or shot. 13, 19 over the Labor Day weekend. Sheer madness. And what's happening is that those who run Chicago and the state legislature and the U.S. Congress play it off. Oh, that's terrible. That's all they're saying. They're not doing anything more to find out what it is that causes a young black child to think that his enemy is the black child who lives around him. And that is what distresses me. The civil rights that we have, we can fight those, and we're going to fight them. We're going to fight. Black people showed conservatives who tried to suppress the vote a year ago that you got to be better than that, we don't better than to stand up all night long. And that's exactly what they did, and that's how Obama was reelected. And if I might just take a second, and regarding Obama, I heard Robert mention, no, he didn't throw much in She called the president a monkey 3 times last week. A monkey, to the point where even Hannity said, "Are you trying to be provocative?" I mean, it was so obvious, and people were buying it. So the racism hasn't gone anywhere. And Obama's presence in the White House has brought it all out. The question is, what do we do about it as a black community, Hispanic community? And what we do about it is to pay very close attention to what we do with our children, what we do with education. Any black child in this room who hasn't graduated, you got to get your behind back in. If you're in your right now and you quit school, then you need to get your behind back in school and shut your mouth until you do it. Because you're falling victim. You are letting the system victimize you.
Yes.
And as was mentioned in the last panel, there's no jobs out there. If you don't have at least a high school diploma, you can forget it. So we have to take care of our own. We have to make sure that every black child learns 2 things. Growing up, 1, your job is to go to school and be as smart as you can be. And your requirement is that you respect yourself and you respect others.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Many of you know our next speaker. He's been here as long as Regis. As a matter of fact, I swear I saw them together at the Lincoln inauguration. And I was just a type. But Larry, I guess I asked, why does it seem that the more things change, the more they stay the same? And how, in your opinion, do we account for the progress? Why progress has been so elusive?
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm also very pleased that IMU did the study that they did. I think it's very important that all of us see it, read it, that we take it into our schools, into our churches, into our families, and let people know. I think it's very important. As a matter of fact, and I teach down at Metro State University, I teach a course called The Black Family, and I'm trying to get, the students that I have, and approximately half of them are black, to read. What I'm finding, college people don't like to read the newspaper anymore. Well, that's fine. Read all of the electronic media, but read newspapers as well, read books as well. And I just advise my students, and I advise people that I speak to in other venues to make sure you have a library at home about our people, because what I'm learning as a teacher at this level now is that many of our folks don't know very much about ourselves. We don't know much about ourselves. We don't know much about where we came from. We don't know much about what we have learned and what we've done. And I usually want to end the semester with my students, with them having, particularly my black students, okay? And, that sounds prejudice, is the way it is. Our people have to understand what we have come through, okay? One of the persons that one of the books that I provide as a text to my student, and this is called A New Look at Black Families, is by a person named Willie, is his last name, C.V. Willie, I believe it is. But whatever, he says, we have built something from nothing. Black people in 150 years came from an abject poverty that we can't even imagine today. We can't imagine the poverty of the spirit that had to be there, the poverty of treatment that we experienced, the poverty of just material things. But we were able to take our spiritual strength with our determination. We turned it into something. And that something is fantastic. I mean, we've done just an amazing thing. Black people have a tendency, our folks have a tendency, and the environment we live in encourages. The schools, as you say, we still try to get the schools to teach black people about black people and white people about black people. They don't want to do it. It's the hardest thing in the world to try to get DPS and Aurora Public Schools to say, part of our curriculum has to deal with the biggest challenge that America and its supposed beliefs and so forth has faced, which is that of dealing with, the aftermath of slavery. That is the biggest challenge our country has faced. And we don't want to deal with it. But anyway, the point is that I have students at the end of the semester who say, well, black people, a kid told me in school the other night, he says, I think that there ought to be fair opportunities, and I'm working with a group that's Fair Share Jobs and wants to get construction jobs for black young people. He says, yeah, but black people don't want to do construction. I said, how do you know black people don't want to do construction? Every time I've tried to help, black folks get jobs, and the construction job was there, I had more than enough people who wanted to take that job. So, but we have these ideas that people are putting in our mind that are negative about ourselves. We don't have anything negative we don't need to let anything negative upset us, because we are a miraculous people. We've done the impossible nearly, and here we are today. Now, we do have some things we need to do, and I'll just make a couple quick recommendations. One of them is to our black elected officials, and we have these wonderful young people up here today, and I can say young because I am almost as old as Regis. But the point is that we've got these fantastic young black representatives and mayors and so forth, but they have to take responsibility. They wanted to be our representatives, and they need to do it. And they need to make sure they give us the very best that they can. It is not okay for anyone in government today, black or white, but certainly not black, to accept a second-class citizenship for black people. That's not okay. So every one of these black folks who are up here today, I've said to the mayor, okay, there needs to be action taken, and I would propose a couple things. One is the mayor needs to appoint a czar, and I'm going to go right in the middle. He needs to appoint a czar to deal specifically with this study. There needs to be someone down in the city who's looking at this proposal, or this report, and saying, I'm going to try to coordinate the city's response to this, okay? There needs to be the black caucus in the legislature and the black and Latino caucuses. They need to each appoint, the Latino caucus and the black caucus need to appoint somebody who's their coordinator. Now, it used to be that we didn't have to appoint anyone or say that because they were all our coordinators. I mean, I met Gloria and Regis in the middle of struggles that were going on and trying to get an economic development person into the academy, trying to keep from being discriminated. I can remember Gloria and I down at the Rocky Mountain News trying to get the first black newspaper journalist. Remember with, well, not the first, but Bob, we were trying to get Bob Jackson. But the point is that the legislative caucuses need to take, again, responsibility. Here's a body of information, and we need to take that information and we need to see what we can do. What we can do to make a dent, what we can do to take us the next step. And as Reverend Peter says, it ain't going to be straight and it's not going to be fast, but it must be continuous. We must continue. And then for all of us, certainly we got to respect and support the organizations that brought us here. NAACP, any black person who doesn't understand that the NAACP changed the world for us as a people over 100 years ago. And we owe many of our organizations support. The Urban League, again, I've been away from the Urban League for 20-odd years in this town. But the point is, we owe that organization of over 100 years support and faith and hope that it will be all the things we need it to be in the future. So, those are a couple of things that we can do some things we can support. People in public life can do some things, and they must. And I think we as citizens, black citizens and white citizens, because there's always been we've always had our white supporters and friends, We've got to make sure that the system works better than it's been working lately for us in this state. And, you know, the Colorado Black Roundtable has given us an opportunity to review. So now let's take that and move with it.
Thank you, Larry. Larry just mentioned the fact that we should be supporting the NAACP and all of our Black community organizations. But our next speaker is, when she called and said, you know, I'm not sure how much civil rights experience I have, because I'll probably be the cutest one on the panel, except for Dorothy and Carlisle. And so having said that, Rita is without a doubt one of the up-and-coming young stars in our community. She's an attorney, she's a go-getter, she's a mom, she works very hard, and she has a lot to say, and she does a lot. And I guess the question I'm going to pose to you is similar to what I posed to Carlisle. What suggestions do you have regarding how we might better motivate our young people about the ongoing struggle?
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank all of you all for forging the way for us. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have the homes that we have now. So my answer to that is we need to go back to basics. My mom and dad are from Oklahoma and Texas, and I think we should go back to the model of Tulsa. We got to go back to supporting our own, having our own, bringing it back into the community. Supporting Black people, Black lawyers, Black accountants, Black churches. I think we need to start there, and then we can go from there and go back out and support our other groups. But right now, we're suffering. We're not doing enough in our community. We need to bring it back to our community and say, this is where we started, and this is where it all comes from. If we don't have a strong Black community, we don't have anything, and that's where we're at now. And I just want to thank you all again for recognizing the NAACP as the nation's oldest organization, but that's not enough. We need to support all of our organizations, as well as fraternities, sororities, churches. We need to get involved, and I just don't see that now. And I don't mean to be negative, but I want to be real about it. I think here in Denver, and I say that because I'm a Denver native, George Washington graduate, G-Dub, and also Spelman graduate. Shout out to the HBCUs. We have to make it a point to be responsible. So many times, a lot of my friends are like, we don't have anything to worry about. I got mine. And we don't. We don't have it. It can be taken away the next day. How many people do we have to that job you go to every day, that government job is going to be there tomorrow. It's not. So I think another thing we need to do is think about empowering Black businesses. Telling people that, you know what, it's okay. You can have your own business. You can start your own business. I have my own business. And believe me, I work for law firms. I did all of that, and I didn't like it. I like being self-employed. I like being in control of my own destiny. That's my take on it.
Reverend Peters talked about the role of the Black church in the civil rights movement. Our next speaker is the newly elected president of the Greater Metro Denver Ministerial Alliance. He is the pastor of True Life Baptist Church. He's a graduate of East High School as an Angel.
great benefit educationally as well as in terms of employment.
lower class to middle class, from middle class to upper class. And I think that the focus at that time was very much on the immediate. And one of the things I think that we missed was in retrospect, I think one of the things that we missed was an opportunity to create a lasting legacy. A lasting legacy. When I think about it, we missed an opportunity educationally. You know, our children have not had pressed upon them the benefit of education. And by education, I'm not talking about just going to school. When I was coming up, my parents emphasized that the education was the way up and the way out. But it was not just about education from an academic standpoint, but it was also a matter that you had to be a certain way as a person, that you had to live a certain way, that you had to conduct yourself a certain way, that it was expected that if you were going to go out get a job, if you were going to be representative of the community, you had to walk a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way, because you represented yourself and you represented the family. And I don't think that we really have that kind of emphasis nowadays, that we really need to not only impress upon our children, yet you need to finish high school, you need to finish college, you know, and also you need to have some kind of trade, something whereby you can sustain the family. But it's just as important that you look a certain way, and that you walk a certain way, and that you talk a certain way, because you represent yourself, your family, and more importantly, your race. And so I think we need to really encourage our children to have a lasting legacy in terms of education. We need to really talk about the fact of having a lasting legacy financially. You know, one of the things as a pastor that I experience is that many times people will come to the end of life, and they have to be buried. And oftentimes I see that family and friends have to get together and take a collection, if you will, to be able to put that loved one away. And when you think about someone who has worked for 30, 40, 50 years in that situation, that's a travesty. Recognizing, yeah, there are issues of unemployment, there are issues of recessions, I understand that. But the fact of the matter is that we need to be able to pass to our children a lasting legacy financially. There ought to be, we ought to be able to leave an inheritance for our young people. You know, we see other ethnicities do that all the time. You know, can you imagine what would it be like if somebody left you $50,000 or left you $100,000? What you could do with that? What kind of boost it would give to you in terms of possibly starting a business or making some kind of venture or buying a house, whatever the case might be. And so we need to think about that in terms of leaving a financial legacy for our children. And then we need to think about understanding what wealth is. We, for too long, have thought that wealth was something that either we wore it or we drove it. And we did not understand that wealth is about more than that. And so we need to challenge our children to have an investment mentality. You know, we talk about unemployment. We need to leave our children a lasting legacy of having them understand that not do you only need a job, but you need to be able to know what to do with the money that you make. I don't care what kind of job you get. If you don't understand how to utilize your money, invest your money, you will never be successful. My father used to tell me all the time, he said, you can make $1,000 a day, spend $1,000 a day, at the end of the day, you're still poor. And so we need to make sure that we invest in our children and understand that not only do you need to be employed, but you need to make good use of that employment in terms of investing it, not just for yourself, but creating a lasting legacy for your children as well. So I think when we think about what characteristics we might put on this community, whether we're in community or whether we're in chaos. I think it has to include the understanding that we need to create a lasting legacy. One of the things I've seen here today is that we have a continuing legacy and hopefully a lasting legacy in terms of our legislators. It seems that that's an area where we are seeing continuing progress, particularly here in the city of Denver. But I'm not sure that that's translating down into our communities and translating down into our homes individually. So we need to not only see that kind of progress going on legislatively, but we need to see that happening at a local level as well. And I believe, as a pastor, as a preacher, as a president of Alliance, that the church can be the one, be the organization, along with others, that can educate people with the need to create a lasting legacy, that we're not just here for the present, to enjoy the benefits, whatever they might be, but that we need to also recognize that we need to make sure that we make investments today that will stand the test of time. So that's my comment.
You know, there used to be an organization in town called Black Directors Council. And Larry Moore, myself, and several others used to be involved. Then one day, this sister showed up who was smarter than everybody there. And all the brothers became a little bit intimidated, and she didn't care. She just whooped us in shape. She went on to be the head of the Civil Rights Commission. She is, without a doubt, one of the, Sharon, one of the most brilliant women I know. She left here and went to California, I believe to California, and did some very positive things there in that state. And now she's back home, and we're blessed to have her back in this environment. Would you please welcome the former director, executive director of the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, Dorothy Hayes White. Is what are your perceptions of the current state of civil rights and race relations and what some have claimed is a new post-racial environment?
Thanks, John. And I want to thank all of you, and I've got to say a shout out to Cleo or something for being a part of getting me involved in this, but you all know where my heart is. I've been gone for 23 years. And I'm sitting here and experiencing all of this with some of my Emmanuel High School classmates and thinking, we're the Thunderbolts. I mean, what did I say? And mighty Thunderbolts, right? So you all would expect no less of me or any of the rest of us than what we've been able to do. But to try to get cut to the chase, there's so much I'd like to say. So many things that happened to me this year. This 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, the 50th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech, 50 years since we graduated from Emmanuel High School, the first time I'm on the stage in 50 years, where I stood shortly after coming from Newton, Mississippi to Denver, Colorado, and Emmanuel High School, my first integrated experience in a public school setting or any other kind of setting for that matter. I lived segregation in the deep South in Mississippi. So when people ask, has the civil rights movement made a difference? Has there been any progress? I can tell you, not just from an academic perspective and having studied history and that we have made progress. I remember black water fountains, colored only is what they said, and white only water fountains. I remember coming to Denver to visit relatives on the bus. We didn't fly in those days. And we, black folks, sat in the back of the bus. There was a sign that was a demarcation of where we could sit. Now, you know my age, or approximately, because I'm talking about 50 years. But really, that has been a long time, right? And on the other hand, it has not been a long time. But yes, we are standing on the shoulders of all the folks, including many of those on the stage who are not that much older than we are. But we're standing on your shoulders and the shoulders of vote. But that's what happened. They paid that poll tax and they voted. So when there are efforts underway to have a chilling effect, to create all of these false requirements for people to authenticate themselves in order to vote, that's real to me. And I know that the progress that has been made, and we're going to deal with that, we are, is something to be acknowledged and recognized. And yes, young people, my daughter, my grandchildren, and others need to understand that. And no, we're not doing as good a job as we need to help them understand that. I, like Larry, deal with students, adult students now, in my retirement, including African American students and Caucasian students. They do not have a clue about the history of civil rights in this country. And we are not doing the job we need to do. I think we're trying. But we all have a responsibility to make sure that everybody knows, because we have to work together as a people. This isn't a problem, whatever the problems are, call it education, let's call it a challenge. Whether it's the gap in education, in employment, in economics, in healthcare, in the status of families, whatever the situation, it's a responsibility of the entire nation, the whole community. We take care of our communities. However, it is something that is going to be beneficial to everyone. Dr. King said, and I'm paraphrasing, so long as any one of us is less than he can be, none of us is the best that he can be. And so we all have an obligation to help each other. And one of the last things I'll say, because I'll go on and on and on, but the last thing I'll say is that I think we have to tell our story. We have to tell our stories, and I've been reluctant to do that. You know, when I came back and Sharon said, Dorothy, you know, we're doing this, and Leo said, and da-da-da-da, I said, Sharon, I said, where are the young people? You know, where are the people coming behind us? I've been gone for 23 years. Everybody up here, we saw today some fine young folks coming along and taking leadership roles, and we need to continue to support them. I'm tired. We're tired. But we cannot give up. I think that's been the most sharp and dramatic lesson that I have learned this summer. We have to keep doing whatever we can do. Our roles will be different, and we'll make some adjustments, and we won't always be in the forefront, but we have to keep working, and we have to support the young people that are coming behind us. We have to be informed, we have to read, we have to fight for legislation that will protect our rights. We have to fight against legislation that's intended to undermine and compromise our rights. We have to make sure that we're working together. Somebody else said that. We are too splintered. One of my classmates said, Dorothy, we're all over the place. Everybody's doing something different. There's no communication, coordination. We've got to work together. We're stronger when we work together as opposed to every little group or every entity doing its own thing. And then someone mentioned here, Larry, I think it was you, and those were great days of the Black Directors Council, weren't they? They were fun days, but we did some things. We really made a difference, I think. But then we do have to be accountable to ourselves and our community, and we have to hold other people accountable. We have a responsibility and obligation to make things right ourselves and move beyond thinking that someone else is going to fix it for us. We have resources and capabilities and talent and expertise and skills and knowledge and resources, and we're creative and innovative people. And working together with the larger community, and there are good people in the larger community. They are not separate from the rest of us. So that is my commitment to the extent that I'm able to do these things, and I appreciate being a part of this. Reverend Peters, Regis, so many people who stood behind me and with me and beside me in those tough times. Gloria at the Civil Rights Commission when we were being beaten up and so forth and so on. So it's wonderful to be here, to be a part of this, and I know that we have a bright future in Denton.
At this juncture, we're going to take either recommendations from the community or questions. But let me caution you when you get to the mic. This is not going to be one of those hard things. You have a minute to
extreme poverty we see. We're going into winter again.
What's your question? What's your question?
I'm getting to it, sir. Just a moment.
Well, no, that's not how we make the rules, man.
President Martin created a program called Veterans of Hope and Ambassadors of Hope to get the stories of people and to work on them. I would really urge us to follow Dr. Hartman's example in making sure, as you were pointing out, that we get those stories. And Dr. Custer did the same thing at Temple University because he talked about that issue. And so what I'd like to challenge you to do is to figure out how we can all work together to overcome that great barrier of poverty that has existed in our country since it was founded. Thank you.
Let me just respond to that real quick. Off to your immediate right, there are two people, Bert and Laura. Rocky Mountain Public Broadcast has a system called Flashlights. It's an ability to have community tell their stories. Connect with them, let them share with you the process, because around table we'll be looking at ways to share the stories. Good question. Took a little bit of time. I had an answer for you, but I'm glad that you did.
Questions for the panel. So I remember about 6 or 7 years ago, since we're in Manual, when Manual first closed, and when they went to a 3-school system, and how it was right when gentrification was coming into the community, and it seemed as if all of the advanced classes were on the top floor, the English as a second language was on the bottom floor, and your mixed classes were in the middle. So it became white students on the top, Latino students on the bottom floor, and blacks in the middle. My question for the panel, because you lived through segregation, is what are your thoughts on segregation that we have in our educational systems now that are coming in more of a convert way, where it's saying English as a second language, we're going to put all of our Latino students on this side of the school, or we're going to have advanced placement classes, but those aren't really going to be offered for a lot of students, so we might not be more of one race or another. What are your thoughts as far as racism and segregation that comes in the form of education?
Any comments back?
Let me just say, jump in while we're going here, that segregation is something we can't accept in this country. That black people know that segregation means separate but not equal. We're not going for it. People need choice. They can decide if they want to go to an all-black school or to be in an all-black class. That's their business. But the bottom line is, don't tell me I can't be there.
I have to agree with that. Young man, it took 335 years to get to 1954 to change this country's way of thinking, and it's still, we are working on it from 1954 to now. Think about the 335 years. People are in one mindset. You just can't quickly change it in 54. In the amount of years from 1954 to today. What I would say to those on that lower level and to those who are on that second level, I'm going to do every daggone thing I can do to get on that third level. And let me tell you, there are black kids in AP classes. I see them. It's not enough of them. But it must be a challenge to both of those levels of kids that are in this particular school to want to be on that third level. Because they do have the ability to do it. They have to know within themselves who they are and that they can accomplish anything that they put their minds to.
I'm going to exercise, if you don't mind, I'm going to exercise the moderator's prerogative and have two people answer the question, respond to the question, so that we don't get here all night on every question. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. Well, we just said. Okay, right.
Peace. My name is Bonzel Sawyer, Coach Brigade. Most of these people don't get the understanding. I do have a question. I'll make it very quick, but I do have some recommendations. You told we can make recommendations, and this has not been a panel conversation.
Yes.
So I'd like to go ahead and make them. One recommendation is that we need to start policing our police. There's too many black youth that I have not heard. Nobody on that stage and I've been called a nigger in the past 2 months, 3 months. And I've dealt with plenty of youth that have dealt with racism because it's very a lot. So I think at this point we need to start policing our police and make sure that situations that happen between those so-called black people and the Anglo-Saxon police of the DPD, Aurora PD, and whoever else needs to be policed and watched at all times.
Recommendation number 1, accepted.
Yeah, most definitely. And then the other thing is bringing value back to the black community. That's pretty much where my question is standing for you guys. We noticed that there's a lot of things that are going on that are changing in Denver, gentrification-wise. We deal with the gap in schooling and things of that nature. But it's all about bringing back value. I know this gentleman here was talking about the history, and some of us younger people don't really know the history of civil rights and things of that nature. As you notice, we've lost a lot of youth that were already here. So how do you guys make stronger moves, and what should we do to actually bring back actual value? Because even with these statistics that we got from these folks here at iNews, there's obviously a value misrepresentation there. We need to figure that out. How do you guys suppose that we bring back actual value to the black youth and community of Denver?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, Reverend Peters and Reverend also talk about the role of the black church. Some of the folks have said support our black organizations. I think that's our stepping point, making sure that the church and the community organizations, and more importantly, maybe even some of our businesses, I mean, on a regular basis, we go to barbershops, beauty shops. Why not create conversations where we go? And so, to me, my suggestion to you is that what the roundtable is about to do is in terms of taking these recommendations, going to the powers that be, going to the churches, trying to make sure that the recommendations are heard, allow people then to buy in and feel empowered by the fact that the suggestions that they made today are in fact being dealt with.
Are you saying in the answer to the church, sir?
I'm saying the church is part of the answer. We're all the answer.
Okay, can I get a second answer on that, please?
Well, yeah. A second answer?
Yes. You said Samantha, please.
All right, well, you may not like the answer, but if someone else wants to try that.
I see another viewpoint, but not everybody's in the chat.
I'll give you another answer.
Well, I got it. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to defer to the younger person.
All right, thank you. First thing, I think we all need to be more involved in our schools. We're not involved as black people with PTAs. We don't demand change like the people in Stapleton. That's the first thing. Second, this is a cheap advertisement. The NAACP Denver branch, we are meeting with the Office of Independent Monitoring next Saturday from 10 to 12. And they're the people who police the police. So you and your friends, please come out, and then you can ask those very questions of the police. Second, that meeting's going to be at the District 2 Police Station, 3921 Holly Street, and that's in the community room. So you can ask those very questions of the police. The third and final thing is, if you want to come take back the community, you have to buy into the community. You have to support your black businesses. You have to buy into the community. You have to buy your homes in the community. And that's where it all starts, strengthen the community.
Thank you.
Sometimes the topic sounds like we're concentrating on uneducated, poor, single parents. We had a conversation in the back. How do we get to people who should know better? So myself, third generation college student, brought myself up from the projects to a master's degree, yada, yada, yada. I hang around people that are like me in doing everything I'm supposed to, right? Against the grain. So the stats, I saw the odds. How do we make sure that the people that should know better do what they're supposed to do? So exactly what we were saying. My recommendations, one would be join organizations that would get into some professional development training. A lot of times we're turned off from our nonprofits because of bad organizational development. Bring us in, you say you want to organize here, but because of the intergenerational gap, some of the older people, they don't know what this is. For the young people, we have degrees, we tell you what to do, okay? There's some things that we do on a professional level that we need training on. We need finance training, budgeting, planning, project management. I would like to see your organization try to organize some professional development, see why, bring it in budget, actually get grants and things like that. He needs to professionally know.
I have a quick recommendation and a question. My recommendation is that the CBRT get all these great people together and put together a new action plan as to what we're going to do next, what our next steps are. And I like Larry's idea of having the mayor appoint a czar, look at the Moving Ground report, and for us to pull together all of these organizations, people that put together a plan that can help our community get through where we need to be. And my question for you, John, is
Well, that's a good question. And since you asked it to me, I'll respond. For those of us who are aware of the losing ground process started back in July. The research report started back in January in terms of sharing with the community. What the roundtable did, took it upon itself to make sure that we brought the information to the community. In selling this to the community, one of the things that we said is that we would take the recommendations, ideas, and suggestions and put them into a workable document, a plan, a game plan, a book of recommendations that we then take back to church, we'll take back to community organizations, we'll take back to the legislature, we'll take back to the city council. So Mary, in terms of your specific question, it's on me, it's on us, all of us. I'm not going to accept the responsibility by myself. But if I play a cabinet role, I will do that. I said from the very beginning, one of the things that I would do is try to make sure that I help create an environment where black people, black boys and girls can be successful. That has changed. Yes.
My name is Darren O'Connor, and I was here today listening to some of our representatives, Mr. Brooks and Representative Williams especially caught my attention in requesting that we come down to the Capitol and support some of the very great legislation she's going to be working on next year. But there was a fair amount of time I was glad to hear about the 50% foreclosure.
Question or recommendation?
I'll get there. You gave everyone else a chance.
No, I didn't. 50% more recommendation, man. That's what I want.
50% of the people in her district have been foreclosed on, and she killed the Colorado Mortgage Accountability and Housing Stabilization Act. My question, not for you, but for the rest of you, is I have tried. I've showed up in her town halls, I have shown up in her office, I've called, I've done everything, and I'm told I'm not from her district. So even though she killed legislation for the entire state, I cannot engage her. Their elected representative allowed the basket to continue this. My question for you is how do we engage people once they've got that position of leadership, that pulpit as they use the term, to do the right thing and to at least answer for their votes?
I want to put that question to the did you want to share with us relative to his questions? And I think Larry will respond.
Yeah, that's a good question. Persistence. You have to just stay in the face of some politicians. You know, some politicians like to be elected for the Senate to be a politician. And they just like being a politician. There are others who are elected who are committed to try to bring change and to help. But all of us, past, present, and former, respond to pressure. And I mean persistence. I mean you have to show up. Now, it was easy when Gloria and I were in our house. We had a community office, so we couldn't hide. They knew where we were, they knew how to find us, and they were there all the time. But that doesn't seem to be as popular now. If it is, but it's structured. But just be persistent. You have to show up, and you can also go to another elected official. When we were there, there was just a couple of black folks down there, so we represented black folks from Pueblo, Colorado, and they would tell you real quick your mind too. So you gotta just be persistent. Not write letters necessarily, but show up. Show up and keep making your point till you get some movement.
Thank you. I was going to say essentially the same thing. I mean, it's not going to be easy to change the way people strong. You got to keep at it. And I think that the final analysis, find some other people to help you. You know, I mean, you don't have, it's not a one-man show. And a lot of times we approach, I think, public officials in a kind of negative way. I'll show you what you ought to do. But in the final analysis, you know, you got to deal with it. And that's never easy. I know when I write my note to the mayor, it's my second note to him about appointing Nazar. He may not like it, but that's tough. I'm gonna keep on because I think that needs to be done. That's me.
I'm Sharita, and my question actually is that I'm heavily involved in community engagement right now. And I go out to the community and literally give out flyers in regards to healthy eating and active living. And now we get covered Colorado campaign. And I've had some very crazy responses, specifically from Black people. And one of them was from a guy who told me to stay Black, apparently because of the way I was talking. And trying to be professional still because I was at work. So what I want to know is somebody like me who's very, very about supporting the Black community and helping them support. How do you pass the fact that the majority of people you're getting comments from are Black people? When I want to be professional, I want to talk to them with respect, but it's like you go out there, it's like they don't want to hear it. It's like, oh, I'm a man, I'll just deal with that. It's like I don't know which way to turn. It's like I feel like I have to push, pull, and drag people to care about their own selves. Even dealing with Black minds and metro. Like, how do you get people to care about their own selves and not, you know, push you down simply because you're an old trailblazer and you talk, there's no problem. I'm just trying to figure that out.
It's never easy to try to do what's right. Everybody praises Martin Luther King Jr. now. You don't know how hard a time I had trying to get people to make a baby step. To make a baby step in support of the civil rights movement, in support of Dr. King. When Dr. King came out against the war in Vietnam, Black preachers across the country were holding press conferences against him. When Daisy Bates wrote the book, The Long Shadow of the World, you heard all kinds of criticism. It's a part, it goes with the turf. If you're thin, your skin is thin, and you can't take it, you won't last long. But if you stick with it, yes, some Black people are going to criticize you. Some students who do well in school are going to be criticized by other Black students because they did well in school, and they made it up to another level. But that goes with the turf. You got to be able to take it if you want to stay in this battle. At least you're not being beat like the young people that we were working with were. And it's a whole different ballgame. I was with a group of kids who wound up in jail, and they were singing freedom songs on the bus. But you see, they learned in Birmingham that if you lock up 500 people, you gotta feed 500. And they soon got tired of that kind of mathematics. Thank you.
I'll just be real quick. What the pastor said reminded me of the question early on regarding AP classes. You know, there was a study done, I don't know if anyone's in here that was involved with the study done by the Civil Rights Commission on disparity. And one of the themes that kept coming up was that many young Black students who worked hard and wanted to be moved into AP classes and were out of in the baccalaureate classes were accused of acting white. And so many of our students have to be willing to endure some pushback from some of their own contemporaries because they want to move ahead academically. They say you're acting white. The only thing you can say is whoever said that being white was reserved for white people. And so I just think we have to give strength to our students so that they want to be in the AP classes, and then back them up and tell
there weren't any black contractors getting any work on this project. And so what the black management of RTD did was they called in all the black churches and they set them up and they did this great big old song and dance pony show saying that we got black people up here. And the churches, I love them. I love the Lord. I love what they're doing. But it seems that they pull against black construction companies. They get contracts to train laborers, skilled craftsmen, but they don't give black businesses an opportunity to employ those people that these churches are training. So my question is, how can the black church support and build black construction companies?
That is a great question. And recently, everybody turned the mic to the president of the Greater who, by the way, is a black teacher. And I would say that probably happened several years ago, or just recently. All right. So we're going to say that there's a new sheriff now, and the new sheriff will speak to your issue.
I think that's a big question. I think one of the things is that the church and black businesses need to sit down and develop a strategy. I think so many times that we are working independently, and we are trying to do what we think is helping you, and maybe what we're doing is not necessarily the best thing that needs to be done. So I think we need to sit down and dialogue and create a strategy and come together with one mind to approach those who are passing out all the contracts. I would say that we need to sit down, churches and businesses, and develop a dialogue and understand what the real need is.
Yes.
If I may just make a real quick comment on the other side of that, I don't know, your question was, what can the black churches do to build construction companies, black construction companies? The other piece of that, though, is what can other entities do, including yourself, to ensure that those funds are that there is compliance in the allocation and distribution of those funds. WMBE, MBNA programs have standards and requirements that they have to follow or risk losing both their status and their funding. Those reports go to Congress. It's a long process, but that's another part of that. We need to know what our rights are and exercise those.
I love your comment. I think, one, we need to get people like Alberta Simmons and calm them down a little bit, but Alberta has the strength to go and protest the inequity of the RTDs and the rest of the city entities that are not sitting down at the table with us and giving us those contracts. We have these certifications. I have a certification, and I know you have a certification, but I don't think we're putting enough pressure on them. So I think, yes, we go to the churches and the organizations, but we need to come up with a strategic plan, and when that strategic plan doesn't work, then we need to protest and/or sue.
We've come to a point. You put me in a bad spot. But nonetheless.
I have a recommendation. What I've heard today made me wonder what it would be like if we had Metro or UCB help us offer a community-based seminar on the civil rights movement, on Black history, something that we could hold in a church or a school building. But we've got a lot of great teachers, as you all have seen today. And we've got a lot of young people, even some of us old folks don't understand our history and the essence of our culture. So I want to recommend that the paper consider somehow trying to put together some kind of
on the civil rights movement and what it means for African Americans today?
We have a person who was here earlier today, and he and his wife left, but he's the new chairperson, I guess he called it, of the it's called now the African Studies Department at Metropolitan State College. He was here, Metropolitan State University. He was here. His name is Grady Willis. Grady Willis. Anyway, Grady is from here. He's from Denver. He went to Thomas Jefferson High School. He's a young guy. His wife was with him. She teaches also at Metro in Ader. Grady is a good guy. Grady Winston Willis. He would love to do Winston Grady Willis. Anyway, I'm going to take your recommendation back, and I know John will also. But I think you're absolutely right. One of the things we got to do again is we got to teach our people about what's going on. And the other person, as you know, who's been steadfast with the Colorado Black Roundtable has been George June, professor up at Greeley. So I bet you between the two of them, we can get a couple of really good seminars for the community, maybe even held here, that would help people understand a little bit more about what's happened in the past.
Okay, thanks. Real quick. And preparing for this, I mentioned to you all that we had to go out, hand out literature, and I thank everybody who helped us do that. But one day, we wanted to put out the literature. My grandson and I were together, and I said to him, Solomon, Papa was tired, getting this losing ground literature out. And he came up under me, Jim, and I picked up on you, so he came up under me and said, Papa, I'll help you find the ground. And I thought that was profound. I will help you find the ground. Story number one. Story number two. African king trying to decide how he goes about dealing with his three sons. Knowing that he is the king and knowing how important it was for the family and the tribe to stay together, he gave each one of them a task. And so the first son had to break a stick, and he did it successfully. The second son had to break a stick, and he did it successfully. The third son broke a stick, and he did it successfully. They came back to the father and said, no. The father then took 3 sticks, put them all together, and said, break these. Each son tried with no success. And they said, well, Dad, what is the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that each one of you can break the same stick, but all 3 of you have to work together to break all the sticks. The third story. Our elected officials are different than the elected officials that we're dealing with today. The former elected officials. Our former elected officials were activists. They got in the street. The elected officials today are much more administrative. They are delegators. They hope that the job gets done. One of the things that we will have to teach them is that in a situation just like this, we have to take it back to the streets. That's it. And then, just coming back from Princeton, where I was doing some community programming and some research, I ran across a guy who talked about the new ed theory. And supposedly the new ed theory is that you don't tell kids that they have arrived. Sometimes you don't even tell them, great job. What you tell them is that you're moving in the right direction and that you have not arrived yet. You create the opportunity for growth. When you just tell them that they're great, they're good, and everything is good, sometimes they get comfortable with acquiescence or get comfortable with mediocrity and just stop. But if you share with them the need for them to do more and that they're on the pipeline of being successful and there's much more for them to do, then there's an opportunity that you can create a ceiling, and a new ceiling, and a new ceiling, and inspire each young person to learn. And then lastly, we went through the entire day without acknowledging the Southern Colorado Black Roundtable. There's a group of folks in the spring, June Wilder, Don Ritchie, and others, who are doing similar things that we're doing. Would y'all please just acknowledge the Southern Colorado nothing, you lose more ground. Today, we decided, we got commitments from folks to do more. And so I encourage all of us to take a minute to look at the opportunity for doing more and see what that means in a post-desegregation society. See what that means in a post-racial society. See what that means in terms of our ability to not only be, but to be more. And every day in this community, we can face that challenge. So having said those things, Roundtable appreciates everything that you did today. Many of you sat here through the entire afternoon. But I challenge and ask for one more thing. On the table as you go out, you didn't get a chance to raise a question. You didn't get a chance to make a recommendation. Would you please fill out the form and leave it so that we can make sure that whatever your thoughts are, whatever your recommendations are, can be captured along with everything else that was here. If there's nothing else, then in the words of the old